Well, from being 8 minutes away from winning the premiership in 2023 to missing finals completely in 2024, could it have been any worse? This is the season review for the Brisbane Broncos. To break this down for me is zero tackle expert analyst Darren Parkin. Darren, pretty messy fall from grace for the Broncos this year.
Yeah, you could make a film really on their last couple of years. It's been an incredible story for them. They were dominant last season. If they didn't run into a juggernaut generational team in Penrith, the side they were dominating in that grand final, then they would have already won a flag in this era, or premiership in this era, I should say. But they've, the fall away was very much unexpected. They actually started the season as premiership favourites ahead of Penrith. The perception was that they'd be scorned by what had happened to them, that the talent on their list was deep. They had a lot of really good young quality, and then they go over to Vegas. A bit of controversy over there too, with their player Ezra Mam alleging racial vilification. Then there were altercations off the field. They got belted by the Roosters. They come home. They actually steadied a little bit. They got to 7-4 and they were fifth on the table. Then it falls over completely. They lose their next 6 out of nowhere. They organise a review internally amongst their playing group to assess what went wrong, and at the end of it all they sack their coach. So it feels as if have enough people taking responsibility, but yeah, you could not have predicted really a bigger set of headlines for the Brisbane Broncos.
Yep, absolutely. As you said, pretty much a movie their 2024 season. So let's move over to the 2024 pass mark. So, as you were saying, they entered 2024 season as the premiership favourites. So, I think it's fair to say they did not pass the mark this year.
No, it's an easy grade to give, that it was definitely a failure. And it's funny that there's so many topics that you could talk about with them. And I know some of the suggestions around the Broncos had been that, they had some big heads, or they might have got ahead of themselves in certain aspects. And maybe if you've lost an agonising grand final in such cruel fashion, it's quirky to start a season in Las Vegas anyway, but was that the best thing for them? It's almost like not a pseudo start to the season, but it's a very different path through. And, in terms of a side that really wants to knuckle down and get things right, maybe that wasn't the best approach. I mean, you still got to win games as they're in front of you, but yeah, I mean, the season was undeniably a failure, and from 7-4 to end up 10-14, getting belted by the Gold Coast twice and a few other performances, a lot more errors, 48 more line breaks last season. They were the worst side in terms of completions and everything like that. So just a disaster. Yep,
absolutely. So definitely didn't pass the mark. So let's delve even deeper into the lowlights. Well, we've already listed a few lowlights, but let's get into a few more. So let's start on field with some of their injuries.
Yeah, I mean, they had a pretty good run last year, as most top sides do, but not the case this time. At different ends of the experience spectrum, the origin period hit them pretty hard, as it does to some sides. Obviously, you get players that get hurt either at or around the origin period, where we were already stretched a bit with your resources. And they lost Reece Walsh for periods, Adam Reynolds, Payne Haas, all missing a lot of games at various stages, and they just couldn't build momentum as a result of that. And then you look at what happened to them on field as well. So they lost 10 of their last 13. Then you started to get those rumblings of off-field stuff. But from a pure numbers point of view, worst record in the league for set completion, most general errors, most handling errors. They didn't look after the ball. They looked amazing at times. They scored some brilliant tries, but they were often a little bit too bold and a little bit too, I don't know, maybe arrogant is the right expression in the way they were playing the game, but it just led to turnovers and spiraled out of control. I mean, you look at the 2 Gold Coast games, they've been the big brother. They've only lost twice to the Gold Coast Titans in a season once, and that was in 2020 when they won the Spoon. They conceded 82 points in 2 games against the Gold Coast, 16 tries, and they missed over 70 tackles in those 2 games. So that kind of sums up I guess their approach at times during the season, just ill-disciplined.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Broncos fans, you can sigh a breath of relief. We're just going to get over to some highlights now. All right, so looking at some highlights for the 2024 season for the Broncos, a bit of a different one, the postseason review. Where do we rate that?
Yeah, it was hard to find an on-field highlight. You'd probably look at Magic Round when they beat Manly with a lot of injuries. They then lost 6 on the bounce after that. But I've put the postseason review in there because I think it should have been a highlight, and it still might be, but I think it took a lot of ownership onto the players, which fundamentally is a good thing, but I'm not sure it came up with the right answers. So Adam Reynolds, I thought, explained it pretty well, saying we sat down and reviewed the season. Everyone had a questionnaire on things that they can improve, what went wrong, how do we get better. And what he basically said is that they want to sit down as a senior group, get on the same page and move in the same direction. And then the key quote was, we just want to get on top of things sooner. We didn't recognise problems quickly enough, so we've got to put a stop to that earlier. But the end result is, the feedback's mostly negative about Kevin Walters, then he gets the flick. So how much of it was ownership and how much of it was, the guy that led us to a grand final 25 games ago is the problem. So if that's all they've come up with, then then it probably hasn't worked. So it's a good idea that hasn't necessarily come off.
Yeah. So that's a highlight if you choose to look at it as a highlight.
That's right. Good idea, maybe not good execution.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's look at something that's definitely a highlight, our most improved. Okay, so our most improved for the Broncos in 2024, Mariner.
Yes, youngster, 21 years of age. I mean, if you were to look at Broncos players that either enhanced their reputation or took a step forward, you could count them on one hand. There just wasn't enough of them, and he was clearly one who did. Ranked first at the club for tries with 17, which was top 4 in the league as well. He led the club for line breaks, played 21 games, wing centre, and set a platform. So the start of the year, if you're looking at players to enhance their reputation, he's probably the only one, I would say.
Yep, absolutely. All right, moving over to the headlines. So the Brisbane Broncos could not stay away from the headlines, as we know here at Zero Tackle in 2024. So let's start with the immediate replacement of Kevin Walters.
Yeah, so I mean, they launch a review and then a couple of days later, rather abrupt. I mean, it was considered possible given how tumultuous the season was, but the rather abrupt sacking of Kevin Walters, and then not long after, Michael Maguire, who had been linked to a few other clubs, is appointed very quickly. So it reeks of it being orchestrated or in the works for a little while. And look, maybe that's the case, but if it's then painted as a review, and how much of that was independent, how much of it was predetermined. And look, as you say, the headlines followed them. The Vegas trip didn't go very well. Not all of that self-inflicted. And there was always talk of rumblings and discontent and players being angry at each other. I mean, there was issues late in the season where you would have a player score and only one teammate would go up and celebrate with him. Just didn't look united, and that was jumped upon by the media all throughout the season. Yeah,
absolutely. It just puzzles me that this is these are the headlines from a team that was, again, so close to winning the whole thing. So let's look ahead now to 2025 and the pass mark. All right, so if you're a Broncos fan coming into 2025, what do we want to see from the Broncos? Just calming down.
Look, it's been a relatively negative review, but in terms of some positivity, their list is very, very good. They've still got a lot of depth. They've got a lot of power. They can do most things right. I mean, statistically in 2023, they were unbelievable, and that's still in them somewhere. So they've just got to get on the same page and connect and compete, and hopefully that's what comes out of the review, that they all row in the same direction, whatever that may be. So looked a bit of a team of individuals, and the end result of that is disastrous, but they showed the year before, when they're cohesive, what can happen. So I think 2023 is closer to what they are than 2024 is. They should absolutely play finals and absolutely push for higher than that, but there's so many questions around it. But still a very good team if they get it right.
Yeah, so bare minimum should be finals,
right? Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Well, there it is. All right, well, that wraps it up for the 2024 season review for the Broncos. Thank you, Darren. Pretty hard one there.
It probably was, but Yeah, there's certainly still a light at the end of the tunnel, no question. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So let us know in the comments if you think the Broncos have made the right call on Kevin Walters. Remember to like and subscribe. We'll be doing reviews for every team for 2024, and we'll also be looking ahead to 2026 and who your club should be targeting come November 1. Watch the YouTube channel, I guess. Like, subscribe, and catch all the latest NRL news on zerotackle.com.